Yeah. Woo. Ooh. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. The Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree.
All right, thanks for making me number 6 in your top 5 number 15s of all time.
I knew you were going to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
The Third Degree Net Podcast.
Well, hello, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to episode 96 of Third Degree, the podcast. I am Buzz. I am by myself tonight because we are going to have a special guest who's going to eat up the entirety of the podcast, and there wasn't a lot of news around FC Dallas this week after the draft. Anyway, let me take a moment before we have our guests come in to remind you that Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. 25% off site-wide for all Third Degree podcast listeners with the promo code Third Degree at soccer90.com. You guys can get on there, check it out, take use of that promo code, get yourself some cheap stuff. There should be some jerseys and t-shirts coming up soon, I think, for the noon season, so maybe you can take advantage of that as that code as we get closer to the season. One tiny bit of news, just following up on my Brian Reynolds drop from earlier this week with the news that he signed a contract with Roma. He actually is traveling out on Friday evening, in the afternoon perhaps, or early evening. He'll arrive in Rome on Saturday, Brian will, and then undertake his physical. That's probably been reported other places, but I got that confirmed from my end, so that's the next step. And then I would imagine shortly after that you'll see official announcements of the transfer somewhere between the weekend, probably Monday, Tuesday next week is when you'll probably see some kind of stuff happen. As I mentioned, we do have a special guest today. He's joining us from the FC Dallas organization. He's going to talk about scouting and player acquisition and drafting and fill us all in on the details. Okay, let's bring in our guest for today, and that is what seems to now be an annual tradition, the head coach of North Texas Soccer Club. Please welcome to the podcast, Eric Quill. Hi, Eric. How are you?
Good, Buzz. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Now, today, before we get deep into North Texas Soccer Club, let's talk organizationally about scouting, if that's all right with you, because I think a lot of times people don't, from the outside, know how professional soccer clubs function in terms of scouting. So in order to have that discussion, let's first say, how involved are you in FC Dallas scouting beyond just being the coach of North Texas? I mean, how involved in the process are you?
Very involved. I mean, as far as helping in any way I can to bring young players that have projection to FC Dallas. So it's via North Texas. So obviously college draft I'm heavily a part of. Always using resources. I mean, we're always trying to turn over any rock to find best player we can find, whether it needs to start in our academy and come through, or whether he's a 19, 20-year-old ready for second team play and maybe needs a year to be polished. But heavily involved as much as I can be, because we're all working together to find the best talent for FC Dallas at the end of the day, to provide championships.
So outside of this year, which is a weird year, obviously, with the COVID, that changes the way a lot of things work. Do you along with other FC Dallas coaches, how active are you in terms of going out and watching college players, or is everything tape? Even not just this year. I mean, overall, is it always just tape these days?
Locally, I mean, you can get tipped by there's a lot of eyes on a lot of local talent. As you know, Dallas is an extremely large hotbed for talent. So you rely on relationships around town that are speaking on behalf of players. And so it's easy to kind of get out and watch a game of a player that's being recommended. But obviously, on a larger scale, with COVID and traveling around the world to watch live games is not really, you're not able to do that. So, taking it sort of one step below, you got to really rely on video that people are sending. And then you've got to rely on, people that have been around this player can vouch for character. And so, so it's just it's a different time of recruiting and identifying players, but one where we just rely on resources and our relationships that we feel strongly about, that have earned a lot of trust over time, that hopefully work out.
Now, here's a question I legitimately do not know the answer to. Does FC Dallas use scouts on their staff? I don't mean the coaches. I don't mean the guys, the assistants. I mean, are there full-time scouts on staff, or do they use independent, like freelance sort of scouts, or other scouts not at all? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Yeah, we have full-time scouts looking to kind of grow that department more probably in the future. But yeah, we have a full-time scout working on behalf of the youth academy, and one that's helping with second team, youth academy, and full team. So it's a yes. To answer your question, we do.
Is that domestic or international that they have these scouts, or both?
I think, well, I guess full-time, I think it's mainly domestic, but I think if you look at, there's relationships that are, so maybe some part-time scouts abroad that are their clubs working with.
Now, in general terms, is there a difference between the way you with North Texas find international players versus the way the first MLS team finds international players? Is there any kind of differentiation there, or is it all part of the same process?
I think the first team is a lot more vast with more eyes and more, but same process. I mean, Andre Zanota does a great job with, sort of always having his eyes on both teams and what the needs are, and he's got relationships that are very strong throughout the world that, are very advantageous to the club. So, a lot similar, but, the first team is priority. And so I'm helping in, sort of the second team fashion out however I can. I mean, we're always bouncing ideas. He's as far as the international players, he's finding most of them. And, between agents and relationships, again, like you're going down rabbit holes and just trying to figure out, based on need and based on projection, who's the guy that fits the philosophy of the club that we think is going to be successful in not only North Texas, but Lucci's ultimate group. Because that's the goal, is to find that we're always looking for young players. As you know, we're a young group. And so a lot of these guys aren't ready yet, but they have really close resemblances of a player that's going to make it. So when you find that, you want to polish it and make it ready and try to get it in your doors.
So it would be fair to just characterize it then as a singular player acquisition department for the entire organization, even including the academy, really, in many ways, top to bottom.
Yep. Everybody's taught. Yes, exactly.
Speaking of kicking under rocks and looking for players, the MLS Combine was canceled this year, but there was, I believe, Sporting Kansas City put together a combine. And I think you told me that you were going to go to that. I don't know if you did or not, but if you did, tell us, how was that different? And does that combine in general have value still for Major League Soccer, for scouting?
Yeah. So Marco Ferruzzi and I went to Kansas City. Credit to Kansas City for putting this on, because, and I think there was some other organizations that had some smaller type, more intimate combines. But Kansas City opened it up to the country, basically, of USL and MLS. And had they not, I think a lot of these players, these seniors, would have, really struggled to get their name out there. So I thought, for the pandemic and everything that's gone on, for them to put this event together was really great on behalf of these college players. So I think for us, it was huge, because we got to look at, so many of those players that were drafted. Had we not seen them live, I think our confidence in our assessment would obviously lacks a little bit of data. So really, really grateful that they had that event, and it taught us a lot about this draft.
Yeah, I always used to say back in the day when I was doing a lot of combine and draft stuff that any good organization and really everyone in MLS should be doing most of their scouting way before the combine. The combine just gives you a last sort of visual check-in, like, does it fit what we think the way we think it does?
Well, there was no college season this past season. So, besides the ACC and some other school, but so you're really going back a year for, scouting purposes on these college players. So a lot of these guys haven't played. I mean, talk about the amount of games that they have not, they've missed out on a ton of games. So really kind of, puts them in a tough situation to be in great form, to be seen, and to be in that moment that you have to catch somebody's eye on a glimpse. And so, but all that aside, I think we did the best we could and obviously we watch games throughout the year as much as we can. We're relying on a lot of college relationships with head coaches that we have who are promoting their players and really, but like I said, this year was an anomaly and for us to get what we did, I'm super proud of and happy about.
We'll get to that in just a minute, but I have one more scouting sort of question. You mentioned, of course, you scout your own academy in a lot of ways. How young do you guys start looking seriously at players? Not that they're going to come in and play for you, but how young is it that you start evaluating that pro level potential with an eye towards the future with kids?
There's not a set age. I think it's always, when you come across, this is the professional team in Dallas, right? This is the top level. So I think there's a lot of people, a lot of eyes out there in the community who have a vested interest in support in FC Dallas. And like I said, there's a lot of tipsters that identify a player that they see something in, and that's what it's about, is basically trying to accumulate those relationships that allow you to be at the forefront of a lot of these guys and how they want players to be, their trajectory to be in the community. So we rely on those relationships. And so, whether it's an 8-year-old, whether it's a 15-year-old, whether it's a 20-year-old, I mean, again, you never know. And I mean, talent develops at different ages. And, we think that, our academy is obviously had a lot of success. And there's a lot of people, wanting in these doors from the young youth level. But it's so just like I said, allows us to have more relationships that allow us more talent to come in the door. And that's just not in Dallas, it's across the country.
Without naming any names, what's the youngest player that you've personally seen that you thought, okay, yeah, that's a kid we need to tap up a little bit?
My 5-year-old son.
Your 5-year-old son. Okay, not your son. Other than that, what's the youngest player that caught your attention and made you really think? How young?
Oh, I mean, they're all over. I mean, I wouldn't say that I've gone after any kid at a super young age, but they're all out there at the park. And I go to my kids' games, and whether I'm at a YMCA game or a club game, you see them. You see these glimpses of talent that are wiry kids that just haven't developed and are goofy a little bit. But there's so much to the eye of the beholder in the soccer world that I couldn't tell you an exact player, but maybe other people in the club could give you a better answer than that. But I just know that there's you go out to any park in Dallas and on a weekend, and you could write down 10 to 20 names.
Yeah, the amount of talent in the local market is staggering, which brings me to the draft that you guys had with the first round pick, Nicky Hernandez, who's a Dallas Texans product, not an FC Dallas product. Obviously, the organization valued him, picked him in the first round. Is there any residual annoyance on your part that you had to draft him to protect his MLS rights? I mean, he's already under contract to North Texas Soccer Club, right? So there's a little bit of a rule there that meant you had to draft him. So I'm not asking you to criticize the league, but on some level, are you like, man, this is annoying, we got to pick him?
No, it's a quirky rule. I mean, obviously, when you have a guy that's in your organization already, it's simple math would say it feels like a waste of a pick when you already have them. But the rules are what they are, and everybody's got to abide by them. And just grateful we got Nicky, because like I said, we've had the luxury of having him in here for a year, and the first team staff eyes on him, and obviously has worked with the second team, and between everybody's eyes, and obviously we knew him from the academy days at Dallas Texans, and he's just a player that we're really grateful that we got to draft. But I understand the frustration by many because it just doesn't add up to a lot of sense in a lot of ways. But rules are rules.
Sure. My scanning of the depth chart as it currently stands, it seems likely, I think, that from the outside that Nicky will probably start 2021 with North Texas again. Do you think you're likely to have him at the beginning of the season?
We'll see. I mean, again, I think he's gaining a lot of traction, so you never know. I mean, I'm never gonna it's just not something. I mean, the hope is you want these guys to have the fastest trajectory into the first team. So whether that's him going into preseason and blowing them away, and they say, well, this guy's needed, we need him now, or he does okay and he needs to be polished a little more when he comes up to North Texas. So we'll be glad to have him if we get him. But we're also, we're not gonna, if FC Dallas says this guy's our guy, and we're gonna celebrate it and be grateful.
Yeah, Lucci tells the story about Tanner last year being brought to spring camp to fill a body when Acosta was hurt, and then knocking their socks off and saying, "Oh man, we got to sign this kid now." So it does happen with that short window of time. People can make large leaps if something clicks.
Yeah, I mean, I think Nicky's in great form. Obviously, he's coming off a lot of confidence from last season. I think he's and confidence is a very attractive thing for coaches to see and identify. So if he goes in in the form he left the post or the off season, the last season, I think he's got a great shot to turn their heads. And he's already done that. I mean, they know who he is. They love him. It's just a matter of, obviously now he's going up in preseason to that next level, and he's going to quickly find out the intensity and the ambition that players play with. And it's, but Nicky's Nicky can rise to the occasion. If I've seen anything from that kid, he doesn't back down, and he rises above the occasion, to be honest, in many ways.
No, I've been saying for a couple of years now that anything past the first round is being picked for North Texas Soccer Club. Now, I'm not going to ask you to say that that's true or not, but given that the first team has 3 keepers and a keeper was selected in the second round, my read is that keeper probably is more likely, again, to play with North Texas. So given that you needed a keeper, pretty happy to see Colin Shetler, who was the first keeper on many draft boards, fall to you guys in the second round there.
Yeah, extremely happy. I mean, he was the number 1 target for the first team as far as a keeper, based on we did a lot of research, and so to have him be around when we got him feel like I got really lucky. So he's going to the first team preseason. He's been identified by Drew and staff and really targeted. So look, he's young. We have a place for him, and so whether it's another preseason goes in and earns his stripes, or if he needs a year to develop in North Texas, and he's going to have that option probably. So, but between both teams, keepers was a need.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing him listed as high as a top 10 pick. So that's a real value, middle of second round. I think he's listed at 6'1", which is maybe like an inch or two shorter than might be perfect, but certainly there are 6'1" keepers that have been successful. Have you seen him play? I mean, can you tell us a little bit about what maybe differentiates him from other keepers?
Yeah, no, obviously he's coming from the top conference in college soccer, arguably, and he's been a leader. He's a great shot stopper, very athletic kid. But his feet were the best of the lot. And as you know, in FC Dallas, we want to play out, and we want to play through our keeper as the 11th player, and so that's an important piece of the puzzle. Just shot stopping is not so he was more of a complete package, we felt, than most of the others.
Yeah, we talk about the keeper's feet with what we call Lucci ball. You guys don't probably call it that, but we call it that. The third round gets fascinating for me. Tebow Jakel is a name I had heard, but out of Campbell, is a French kid. He actually played for the Mets Academy at one point. But other than having heard his name, I know zero about this guy. What can you tell us about Tebow?
He's an amazing goal scorer. I mean, if you can pull his clips, this guy doesn't finish the generic style. This guy has he's dual-footed, probably the most composed kid I've seen in the box in college soccer in the last couple of years. He just scores some really high-level goals from a thought process. He's not taking wild, just reckless, aimless shots in traffic. He's actually shot faking, getting guys diving around him and then placing it. It's just a real calm, composed kid that stuck out to me and watching him. And he scored. He's a leading goal scorer in college, and like I said, if you look at his goals, they're not tap ins. This guy's scoring some really tight windowed goals, and the shot release was quick, and you can tell he's come from a very high level background and training, because he's exceptionally technical with both feet. Literally, you can't tell if he's left footed or right footed based on how he strikes the ball. So I just like his mentality in front of goal, and I think he's going to add a lot in the final third of the field for this club.
So is he a 9 or a winger, or does he come like as an off striker 10 type? How do you see him used in your team?
He's a 9. I mean, I think he can play underneath as a 10 if you needed him to, but he's more of he plays in between the center backs and plays off back shoulders. Good hold up player, great layoffs. What I liked about him most is every time the guy lays the ball off, there's no standing and walking. He's basically laying it, and he's getting him behind again and trying to get in the box to just be a nuisance off back shoulders or cutting across the front of people. So he's just a guy that has a really keen feel for how to maneuver himself in the 18-yard box. And if he happens to get a bad cross, he's not just trying to put something on frame. He's actually using a really high level thought process, whether it be to take the ball out of the air in the box and getting a defender off-footed to find that half window. He just thinks differently than most players in the college level.
Yeah, you mentioned off-ball movement. That's an underrated quality, I think, that can really separate players from the norm. The next pick was Mark Solas, who's a player that I had sort of at the top of my list of guys that might be senior homegrown signings. Although given, as we talked about earlier, the state of college soccer, I mean, it was going to be a crapshoot whether Dallas was interested in a senior homegrown or not. And he still could be eligible for that hypothetically. But do you know, number one, is Mark going to stay at UNC for the spring season or come to Dallas? And then also, I know a bit about that player, but maybe you could tell us about Mark from your point of view.
Yeah, no. So we're still working on. I believe a lot of these players may play their spring season, their final season with their colleges. That's going to be a question for first team staff because obviously they're drafted by the first team, and so they're working that out. But Mark's obviously a product of the academy here. Won a national championship here in the academy. Highly touted by obviously Lucci. Is very familiar with him. I'm not so familiar with him from I wasn't here when he was here, but I've watched obviously games of UNC and for my former club. We played against this group quite a bit, so I'm aware of his mentality. He's got a great mentality for the game. He plays bigger than his size. Really technical. A very good passer out of the back. So he's sort of your Zach Lloyd type, if you will. Like maybe a little undersized for a center back, but you can't undersize. The heart's bigger than the body in a lot of ways. And so he's one of these kids that we really just love. His killer and winner mentality that we didn't want to lose that opportunity. So
in your mind, maybe he's more of a center back than a right back?
I mean, I think he can play him in both areas, but I think we'll figure it out once we're on it. Again,
sure.
He's 4 years out of the program really here as the academy. So wherever we see, but I think he can play in both positions, which makes him more attractive to any organization.
So another player that I'm really excited to see get picked is Gio Montestosa, who's another academy product out of UNC. Lost his junior year with an injury. I think it's a knee injury, but Eric, please question me if I'm wrong on that. But a player that I had really high on my list of guys I was watching for potential homegrown talent because he's a very talented attacking player, very creative. Obviously, the injury is a big, big problem. He's still trying to come back from that in many ways. What a terrible time to be coming back, by the way, from an injury with his COVID and inability to train and play. But, a guy that I'm real excited to see picked with a shot to hopefully land with North Texas. Tell us a little bit about this player.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with creative. I mean, Gio's a very creative kid. He's not your prototypical 9. This modern day, is not a Lewandowski. He's a slider body frame, but he thinks on an exceptionally high level, and really does a good job of changing speeds in areas that allow him to get shots off. And we had him a couple. I saw him for the first time, not this past summer, the summer before when he came home from UNC, and I just really thought, man, this kid's got he's very different in a lot of ways, and very, very technical. And so I think he's going to help us in a lot of ways. He's going to bring a different type of 9 than what we have, and maybe a Bruce or and others. So we'll see. I mean, where he ends up, but I really like where his game is, and I know I got a lot of feedback from other college coaches around the ACC that really liked him, and that says a lot when other coaches and other programs, really speak highly of you.
Yeah, he had really broken out his sophomore year and looked like he was going to be the man, going into that junior year before he got injured. Just in case people listening don't know, Mark and Gio, the people we just talked about, were both part of the Dallas Cup winning team with Paxton and Jesus. And that back in, was that 2018, I think it was. So, some guys that have played at a high level. Do you think that his game is adaptable to maybe a wing sort of position if he's not the prototypical 9?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different ways we can play with his profile that would allow him, if we went to decide to go play, maybe more narrow 3 forwards. And so yeah, there's different ways. Look, a footballer is a footballer. I mean, we took him because of his football IQ and his ability. I mean, so it's up to us as a staff to put him in the right situations that are going to make him and the club successful. So there's different things you can do with a guy like Gio because his creativity and he's a kid that can be versatile and go out wide and come, maybe play in the windows of the game and really create havoc. So yeah, to answer your question, there's a lot of different things and ways we can use him up front.
Yeah, hunting out the gaps between the lines, between the channels. Those are the key elements for modern soccer in a lot of ways, particularly the way you guys play. Let's talk about your roster that you're bringing back for this season for North Texas, if you don't mind. I think on the defensive end, from the outside, it seems like Justin Che, Nkosi Burgess, Eddie Munjoma are potentials for you. Are those the main guys that you see as in the cards for you as coming down from the first team at the start of the year? Is there anybody I'm missing out on there? Dante Seeley, perhaps? Is that another name that might factor for you guys?
We're just in the beginning talks of these, but so I don't want to speculate. But I mean, anybody with a youthful age that needs games is obviously going to be, considered for North Texas if they're not getting games in the first team. I mean, so all those names you mentioned have a possibility. So we'll see how they fare in preseason, and but yeah, I mean, the name of the game with these guys, these young players, is they need to be playing. So, and that's why that's why North Texas was created. One of the reasons why it was created was to make sure that these guys aren't, going gameless. And so I just need to get with Lucci as the rosters get built and preseason goes, how it goes. Those answers will be more clear.
Now, one player that I'm really excited about is Hope Kodzo, who I've seen play and train with the first team and with you guys. How does he positionally fit in? First, what kind of player is he? And then how does he positionally fit into your setup?
Yeah, Hope is really different player than what anything I've sort of worked with in maybe my career. He's just that dynamic in that he's got so many elite characteristics to his game, which you're hard pressed to find in a lot of these players. You're hard pressed to find 1 or 2 elite level characteristics. He's probably possesses 3 to 4. So he's just for me, he can play him at 10, 7, 11, false 9. He's just somebody that's so dynamic with his quickness and his skill on the ball. And he's got great final product. I mean, goals and assists. His final pass is spectacular. His combination play is outstanding. His balance and coordination. I mean, he's just he's a type of player that you if you're 1 versus 1, you have to bring doubles over to, because he's going to get out of anything 1 versus 1 with any kind of space around him. And he does the unassuming. His creativity is like I said, another elite characteristic that he possesses, that he's not afraid to try things and typically, and especially when he does try them, he pulls it off. I mean, he makes you shake your head probably 10 times in a half hour of inter squad play. Shake your head in a good way, that is. And he just, like I said, he's an exciting player to watch. Super dynamic, and crowds will fall in love with him. I know it.
Yeah, the announced contract that came with his signing was an eye opener. Was not the typical 1+1 of North Texas. So to see that longer term contract certainly made me sit up and pay attention. Not that I didn't know he was a good player, but it certainly said something about the investment that you guys would like to make in him.
Yeah, no, I think we definitely, from day one when we saw him, we definitely knew that this was a kid that we wanted to bring in and need to work with, because he's got something that very few have in the world. So, and I don't want to put too much pressure on the kid, but I think my words speak how I feel about, his ability, and I'm just, super blessed and grateful to have the chance to work with him.
Now, speaking of young kids, you had Benny Redzik and Colin Smith with you last year, playing some relatively large amount of minutes. Are either of those young men going to be back, and are there any other academy guys we should expect to see to a larger extent like that?
There's a possibility, one or both will be back. I don't know. Again, it's one of those we're still in sort of the planning phase. There's a lot of, as you know, with our academy and stuff that goes on with players and their futures. So they've been talked about as possibilities in North Texas, and also maybe going to preseason with the first team. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity there for both those players based on the success they had this past season. And then what was sorry, did you have a follow-up?
Just if there was anybody other than those two that we should expect to see for a large amount of time, if you knew it at this point. I have some ideas myself, but I want to hear what you think.
Nobody that we have set in concrete, but I mean, it's there's a bunch of players that are special in our academy, and our U15, U17, and U19s that we feel that we're going to start out with, at least for sure, coming into training immediately, and hopefully earning some minutes in the regular season this year. I mean, guys, we have some. I don't want to disrespect any of the kids that we, just to name a couple. We had Diego Hernandez this past season, which obviously we have. Whenever it's coming year two, we have higher hopes for Diego to earn maybe some more minutes than he did this last season. Young kids like Matthew Corcoran, who came in at the end of the season in our training environment, did outstanding. There's others that we feel are really going to earn definite training, call-ups, but hoping, fingers crossed that these guys earn game minutes in the USL, which I think will be highly valuable.
One of the guys that I had seen that I was hoping might be on your list, I liked the names that you named, but any thoughts about Jordan Jones, who's a young guy that seems to be high on the, yeah.
Yeah, I can name, Buzz, there's literally, I've got a list of probably 10 to 12 kids that we're really hoping to get in right away and start to polish and get ready for USL League play. So like I said, there's a ton of names. I don't want to get them any wrong. And I probably shouldn't even name the first two because they're in no order. Yeah. They're in no order based on, I'm just throwing names out. So right. We have plenty of kids though that are pushing, and it's a great opportunity for them. That's what it's all about. When your peer gets pushed up and gets opportunity at the next level, it drives the human nature, the sort of the ambitious, ways about us as human beings become a lot more vibrant when our peers get called up.
Yeah, I love this about this organization, that you guys seek to push these kids to the highest level they can handle, and even push past what they can handle and see if they can swim in these deeper waters. Now, given the fact that you're not sure who you're getting yet from FC Dallas, you're not sure who you're getting from the academy, you definitely have some holes in your what is going to be like your 18-man consistent sort of group. What sort of positions have you ID'd as here's where we need to go get a guy, either foreign or domestic, to fill in, like Alex Bruce last year, maybe that you signed from another club, or I got to get this position ironed out or I'm in trouble kind of thing? Anything obvious to you at this point?
Not so obviously. With the big thing is with COVID and sort of protocols and not having that fluid, integration between first team, second team, academy, because of obviously, as we know, life today. We've got to bolster the second team roster a little more, because obviously in the past couple of years, the model's been right as far as relying on, academy and first team, integration, but that hasn't been obviously the case because of the protocols. It's just not in the cards to send somebody down from a first team and have them to quarantine for 14 days and then come back. It's just not like I said, a fluid process. So we need to bolster the second team roster a little more. so we can obviously keep guys healthy, because again, we're talking about going back to a 28 game season, and so we need a good amount of guys. So we're basically putting out a healthy group, and we're competing each day. So we will add a couple more this year, just so we're not light with everything that's gone on with COVID.
So if you're going to add a couple more, you might be looking at 6, 7, 8 players then, even at this point.
Yeah. So we're in talks with a few. And I mean, again, it's, as you know, the off season. It's one day it's on, one day it's off,
right,
with certain players. And so but the hope is we got some really good players that we've identified that we're in talks with right now. That as soon as they're signed, sealed, and delivered, you'll be finding out about. But we're working on it'll be when it's all said and done, there'll be some different names you won't recognize, but are super talented, that once you do your research, it'll start to click. These players are interesting.
Now, if you don't mind, I would like to talk about a couple of departures from the team from last season. First, if generically speaking, the window of opportunity, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, not on a podcast, but the window of opportunity with North Texas is relatively short. From the evidence of just watching y'all make moves, it's about 2 seasons. So can you just talk a little bit about the philosophy of North Texas and why the window is so, well, relatively speaking, it's so small, with just about that 1 to 2 season window of opportunity?
Well, the goal is we want to move these. We want to expedite their development as fast as possible. Number one, and so throughout that process of year one, a lot of discussions get had, between first team, second team. All right, where is this player? Because every player that's brought into North Texas has got to have some piece of projection to the first team, and so those conversations are happening quite often. And so, by year 2. We've basically come up with a pretty good plan as to where these players are, where they need to go in year 2. And that plan is portrayed to the player. And so they know that the timeline is such that they can't mess around. I think that's the big issue too, is psychologically putting in the players need to know that North Texas is not a lifetime place for you. Like, that's not what we want to provide for you. And that's not what you want for yourself. So we really want players to understand that the timing here is one that can't be messed with on their end. It's basically, let's get to work as fast as possible, and let's diagnose your games and your deficiencies and your strengths, and how do we put it all together to make you make this jump. And so, and then the other piece too, I think, is like, look, these players, a lot of them they're not dumb. They know they want to make it to a first team. They know they need it. So by the third year of a second team in the same way, in some people's eyes, maybe it's a little bit monotonous, and they don't feel like their shots they're not going to get their shot. And based on, again, there's a lot of variables that maybe there's a log jam in a position that a player plays, and it's time for them to go find greener pastures. So, I mean, again, we put say a 1 to 2, but are we willing to invest a third year in somebody that we say yes, absolutely? If we feel that that's so I don't think again, I think it's more of the message to the player that, like, look, we want you springboarded to the next level, whether it be USL Championship or whether it be here or Europe, whatever, within 2 years of being inside North Texas doors.
Yeah. So in a way, to paraphrase that, there's never going to be, well, I'll say never, there's not going to be a situation where you're like, oh, this player X could be the linchpin for North Texas Soccer Club for a decade. That's not what you're thinking. And that's never going to be the plan.
No. And but look, I mean, if we were to sign a 14-year-old, we're not going to kick him out the door at 16. It's every player is different. Now, if we sign a 19-year-old or an 18-year-old, that's a little bit different than, somebody 14. So I think it depends on a lot, like I said, a lot of variables, but I'll never say never to any situation. But again, I think the message is in 2 years, we believe that we have the wherewithal to make you ready for the next level.
So I'd like to specifically ask you about a couple names, and I'm going to start with Arturo Rodriguez, who's a big fan favorite, MVP of that first year, went out on loan that didn't work out for various reasons, came back and still was a particularly strong player. So Can you talk a little bit about why the time was right to, move on from him? And obviously he's moved up to the Phoenix Rising, which is a higher level. So good for him. So why was it time for him to do something new?
Well, he's ambitious. I mean, again, ambition. Ambitious people don't wait. They don't wait around. That's not who they are. So the one percenters are anxious to try their luck at the next level. And so Arturo's done. Look, he did great here, and the club loves him. Actually, first team loves him. It's just a matter of, again, when we talk about maybe a log jam, is it what was best for him? No, he needed to go. And again, there's a little bit of a pressure based on the loan not working out in Salt Lake, and so he needs to, again, I think that he needs to go to that next flight, which is Phoenix now, and put up. I mean, which he will. Again, he's an ambitious kid, and I'm rooting for him because I believe he's got first team potential, and they do too. And it's just a matter of, it just wasn't the right timing here. But Arturo, again, he's ready for the next level. He's not ready. He's beyond this now. And so we wanted to support him on this journey and wish him the best. And we're going to all be rooting for him. Everybody across the club loves the kid, and he's just an exceptional talent that, like I said, he's going to do great things. He's believe me, I know what his heart's like and his work ethic. He's going to be fine.
I wanted to ask about Breck Evans. He's been your captain pretty much the last 2 years. I think it's fair to say that his loan didn't work out quite as well as you had hoped, although he was recalled due to shortness of bodies in y'all's organization at center back at the time. But he's not caught on with the team yet. Can you tell us a little bit about why the window may have closed on Breck and if you know what's next for him?
Yeah, I think so. Breck's going to be called into a preseason with the USL Championship squad. I don't know which one. And again, Breck's another one that, look, center back you can play right center back, left center back. They can't put him at left back. You could, but it's just not, you're playing him really out of profile there. So just based on the numbers with FC Dallas and who they have right now, again, log jam that just wasn't able to provide the opportunity that he would have needed, and the club saw worthwhile at the moment. But value him. I mean, the guy's won championships after championships. His leadership's outstanding. His talent level is outstanding. He needs that next level jump. Some of us need the organic route. Some of us can skip steps. We're all different that way. And this is just Breck's journey. But Breck is another one that I believe wholeheartedly has attributes that can play at the MLS level one day. He just needs to go to that next step, and that's what I know he'll earn based on he goes into preseason with this championship squad. I have 100% confidence he'll be signed because I just know Breck is a competitor and a talent. So again, he's another one that if you wouldn't be surprised to see playing in an MLS game in 2 years.
But the last one I wanted to ask about was Ronaldo Damas, who has caught on with Orange County Soccer Club, a team I know nothing about, except that I feel like they've been around for a decade, one of the longer surviving sort of teams out there. Talk a little bit about Damas and why it was necessary for him to move on as well.
I mean, Ronaldo's, that's the one position that when you have product, it's a stat, right, that everybody looks at, goal scoring, and so everybody expects goal scorers to go try their luck at the next level, and this was his time. He deserves to go and challenge himself at the next level, and so I'm happy that he landed in Orange County. He's one that I'll be watching, but again, we felt like he wasn't year 3 in USL League One when he's already done. And again, he played injured a lot last year. I mean, so you take a healthy Ronaldo last year, and I think he does the same thing as he did year 1. And so he had a surgery done in the offseason. I expect him to get back to full health, and he's going to help those guys. He's a machine. He's as brave as they come as a 9. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see him on the goal scoring charts as one of the top 2 or 3 goal scorers in the league this year.
Now, USL 1 has announced this vague early May start with the flexibility to move up in the year. FC Dallas is going to start training in mid-February. MLS has announced, although, we'll see what happens with the CBA. Any thoughts without giving away your schedule, obviously, when do you think you guys are going to start training, and when are you expecting a North Texas Soccer Club to begin playing games?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're hoping to start preseason around the same time, around that February 22nd time, getting guys in the week before to quarantine. And then, again, I think there's some soft dates that you can work back from that May 8th. I think so. Some teams are talking about starting the week of April 24th, some are first week of May. So we're just kind of working with other clubs, and there's variables to each club as to whether they can host and whether they can't, and so we're just working with other clubs to figure out how best to start our season. I mean, we're willing to start whenever. I mean, if we start the 22nd, we're talking April 24th. If we start then, that's 8 weeks. It's plenty to get going. So nothing's firm, but you can expect our first game to fall between the 24th and May 8th.
So that's about 3 weeks away from starting camp. You think you're going to have all your pieces in place by then?
I don't know. That's the beauty of the academy, right? If we can, it's a chance for us to see, we can pull in the guys we do have, and along with the young academy products that we want to see, and we can get a great training environment. So that's where we're in a luxury compared to others. And so if we have to wait on internationals to clear paperwork and whatnot, we'll be fine. Of course, we want to get these guys in as fast as possible to sort of get a cohesion going, but we'll be fine. There's a better opportunity now for our young kids.
All right, Eric, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate your openness about all this stuff, and good luck in this season. And we'll be cheering. I love watching North Texas Soccer Club play, and I love following along with everything y'all are doing. So hopefully with the COVID situation, we'll actually be allowed to come to training at some point and watch. That'd be nice, but there's no guarantees.
All right. Thanks for making me number 6 in your top 5, number 15 of all time.
I knew you were going to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, look, Eric, I know you're making fun of me. I get it, but you weren't here long enough. You were only here a year. Come on now.
I get it. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, if I'd have put you in the top 5, Eric, your ego would have been just unstoppable. All right, man. Thank you. Sorry that you're number 6. Best of luck with the season.
All right, buddy. See you.
Thanks. Why do I feel like I'm going to be hearing about ranking Eric number 6 on my number 15's list for quite some time? In my defense, he wasn't here very long. A fantastic player of his career, though, but just not in Dallas for very long. Great guy, though. Thanks again for Eric for coming on the podcast. He's willing to come on every year, and I love having him on because he's got such good insights into the system and the program and the players coming through, which is our bread and butter. We love that stuff. So always glad to have him on. Great guest, and he's always got such great insight. All right, let me remind you that Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. You can get 25% off site-wide on all Third Degree podcast listeners with the promo code Third Degree on soccer90.com. That's 3RDDEGREE, just like the name of our website. Go on there and get yourself some stuff. Maybe get yourself some North Texas stuff, since Eric was kind enough to come on the podcast today. All right, that's it for today for episode 96. Hopefully you guys will come back again for episode 97 next week. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. And we'll talk to you again soon. North Texas Soccer Club.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.